Well, good afternoon, everyone. The board and the staff of Friends in Solidarity are so delighted to have you with us on this International Nurses Day. And we especially welcome all of you who are in any way involved in the healthcare profession. During this past more than a year, you have been our frontline heroes and heroines ministering to those dealing with so many health issues, and especially the millions of people and their families dealing with COVID-19. To you, we offer our profound gratitude. My name is Sister Mary Beth Ham, and I'm a sister of St. Joseph of Chestnut Hill, Philadelphia. I currently work as the Justice, Peace, and Integrity of Creation Coordinator for the Sisters of Bon Secours, one of the member congregations of Friends in Solidarity. I'm also a member of the Education Committee and the chair of the board. As you can see on the slide, we have a diverse representation of women and men religious congregations on our board, some of whom are with us today. We also have a small but passionate and expert staff under the leadership of Sister Joan Mumaw, our Chief Administrative Officer and President. Since today is International Nurses Day, it's a wonderful opportunity to celebrate the good work that is being carried on around the world every day through those involved in the nursing profession. Particularly today, we want to highlight the good work that is being done at the Catholic Health Training Institute in Wa, South Sudan. In 2012, a year before our first graduating class at the Institute, there were only 83 registered nurses and only 19 registered midwives in South Sudan, a country that has 11 million people. Imagine that. But since that time, the Catholic Health Training Institute has trained 71 registered midwives and 154 registered nurses since the first class graduated in 2013. The Catholic Health Training Institute also initiated the first registered nurse training program in the whole country. Now this institute is one of the best training, nursing, and midwifery institutes in South Sudan, if not the best, serving a multi-ethnic student population and forming leaders for the future. The theme for this year's International Nurses Day, Nurses, a Voice to Lead and a Vision for Future Healthcare, speaks to the vision of the Catholic Health Training Institute. The Education Committee is excited to offer today's presentation to highlight the important role nurses play in South Sudan and the blessing that the Catholic Health Training Institute is for the South Sudanese people. During our program today, you will have an opportunity to hear from President and Chief Administrative Officer Sister Joan Mumaw, who has firsthand experience meeting the nursing students at the Institute from her many visits there, and Father Tom Tiscornia, a former chaplain at the Institute and also a former board member who has recently returned to the United States. Camille Grippon, System Director for Global Ministries at Bon Secours Mercy Health, joins us to share her passion around the good work that is happening at the Catholic Health Training Institute from her perspective as part of a health system that is a benefactor. And finally, There will be an opportunity for questions and answers with our speakers. By way of logistics, please keep your mic off and feel free to use the chat box at the bottom of the screen throughout the presentation to make comments or to ask questions. We'll respond to your questions later in the program. And now, it is my pleasure to pass the mic to Joan Mumaw, who has visited the Catholic Health Training Institute on several occasions, has met the students there, and has experienced firsthand both the suffering and the hope that is part of the lives of the South Sudanese people. Joan, you're on.
Thank you, Mary Beth. And good afternoon to everyone who has joined us for this webinar. I'm very pleased to be with you to celebrate International Nurses Day. And for us, we're adding in the midwives and the work of solidarity in training nurses and midwives for South Sudan. Solidarity is a new model of ministry among the poor, built on partnerships between religious congregations of priests, brothers, and sisters, and the Church of Sudan and South Sudan. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, so let me use a few. I do not believe that we can understand the work of solidarity with South Sudan in training of nurses without a bit of background. Sudan is the largest country in Africa, and it became independent from Great Britain and Egypt in 1956. You can see here a map of the whole of Sudan. The colonial powers favored the Arab and Muslim North, and Khartoum was developed as the center of government. The South, primarily African, Christian, and traditionalist, was dominated by the military from the North and was a source of slaves and resources for the North. The Khartoum government imposed Sharia law and Arabic on the people of the South.
Joan, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but your slides aren't sharing.
Yes, they are. Oh, sorry.
So sorry.
Okay, try it now.
There we go.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Susan. As I said, Sudan was at one point the largest country in Africa until 1956. It became independent from Great Britain and Egypt. The South was primarily Christian traditionalists and dominated by the military from the North, and was a source of slaves and resources for the North. The Khartoum government imposed Sharia law in Arabic on the people of the South. The South fought against the Khartoum government because they had little representation. 3 civil wars ensued. Millions of people died until a comprehensive peace agreement was signed in 2005. This peace agreement guaranteed the right of the people of Southern Sudan to have a referendum to decide their future. Here you see a few children celebrating because on January 11th, the people voted overwhelmingly for independence from Sudan. And on July 9th, 2011, celebrated joyfully their newfound freedom. With independence was something, and with independence came a lot of celebration. And in fact, however, this new country had no governmental infrastructure. All the structures of governance and social services were in the North. There were no health departments at the state or national levels of government or in the church until after 2005. And still, there's no legal framework for nurses or midwives for their operations or their qualifications. There were also underlying ethnic tensions among the major tribes in the South that were never dealt with prior to independence. This has resulted in local tribal conflicts as well as national conflicts between political parties and armies dominated by large tribes. Tensions between the dominant tribe of the president, Salva Kiir, a Dinka, seen on the left, and Vice President Riek Machar Nuer erupted in Juba in late 2013, leading to the current civil war. During this conflict, approximately 400,000 people have died, 2 million are internally displaced, and another 2 million are refugees in surrounding countries. Over 70% of the people are food insecure, some bordering on famine. A ceasefire is in place since February 2020, and a transitional government of national unity was installed at that time. The implementation of the peace agreement, however, is slow. There's continued fragmentation among the military and political parties. Local conflicts often flare up between herders and farmers over land. The country is awash in weapons. Child soldiers learn early to carry guns. Here we see a few that have been demobilized, given backpacks, and sent back to their families. Add to this the severe flooding of the Nile and its tributaries in the central of the country, and a plague of locusts threatening the south, and now we have COVID-19. Only 27% of the population is literate, 14% for women. 72% of children are not in school, and there's a need for 26,000 teachers. South Sudan has the highest maternal mortality rate in the world. 10% of children die before age 5. Only 15% are attended by a trained healthcare professional while giving birth, and only 40% have any prenatal care. 80% of the people live below the poverty line. The economy, which showed such promise in 2011, has collapsed over the past 10 years. In 2013, when I first went to South Sudan, the value of the South Sudanese pound was 32 to the dollar. It's now approximately 300 South Sudanese pounds to $1. Hunger is the greatest threat to what is left of any stability in the country. All of these issues, I'm sure you know, have implications for healthcare. It's in this context that solidarity with South Sudan was born. The bishops of Sudan, knowing the lack of capacity in the country, reached out to the International Union of Superiors General. Those are umbrella groups for men and women religious located in Rome. And they reached out in 2004, inviting religious to come to Southern Sudan to assist with building the capacity of the people. An assessment took place in 2007, during which time it was decided in concert with the bishops to focus on teacher training, healthcare professional training, and formation of diocesan pastoral teams. Agricultural was later added to the mix. The first team of religious went to Southern Sudan in 2008. Initially, 2 congregations assumed responsibility for coordinating the development of programs and facilitations in education and healthcare. The De La Salle brothers coordinated teacher training and the Kaboni sisters healthcare training. Everything needed to be created from the ground up. There have been on average 25 to 32 men and women religious with a few laity coming from as many as 19 congregations and 20 countries working in South Sudan at any one time. Here's a group from the beginning of 2020. More than 60 religious and several lay volunteers have been a part of this initiative over the past 10 years. Initially, religious agreed to a 3-year commitment. Many have been there longer. The building and renovation of facilities was a costly and challenging venture, given that all equipment and construction companies needed to be contracted from neighboring countries like Uganda and Kenya. Solar power was installed in all the buildings for electricity, internet, and pumping of water, since none of this is available in the country. So what's been accomplished over these past 10 years? First of all, Solidarity rehabilitated the Catholic Health Training Institution, a 2-story stone structure built with funding from the German church in the late 1970s. It was virtually abandoned in 1983 when missionaries were driven out of the country. Following upon the signing of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement in 2005, refugees began to return to the area. Many took up residence with their animals in the Institute. Since the resettlement of the refugees and very extensive renovation of the facility in 2010, classrooms, dormitories, a small chapel, and security wall have been built. A small agricultural project has also been developed. Initially, CHTI offered only a 3-year registered nurse training program, the first in the country. The addition of registered midwifery program came in 2012 at the request of the Ministry of Health. Here we have the first class in 2010 of those studying to be registered nurses. The first graduation class of registered nurses in 2013. Since then, as Mary Beth indicated, 154 RNs and 71 registered midwives have graduated. Most have graduated with distinction or high credit on the state exams. No one has failed. The different colors here represent midwifery and nursing. These graduates are sought after for their clinical skills honed under the supervision of Daniel Comboni Hospital in Wow. This is a hospital reclaimed from the military and developed by the Comboni sisters. It is a training hospital for students from the CHTI. Annually, a couple of graduates are sent for advanced degrees with the hope of returning as tutors. Let me introduce you now to Sister Esperance in the second from the left, the principal of the Catholic Health Training Institute, as she introduces students and graduates who are working at Daniel Comboni Hospital.
Patient Department in St. Daniel Comboni Hospital. We are happy to present to you one alumnus from CHTI who graduated last year, Mr. Pasquale, who is now employed here and is contributing in training the new student, the first year midwives. We have Bibiana and Chol. And on the far left-hand side, we have another staff from the hospital who are all working together and contributing in the training of our students. Patient Department.
Priority is given to recruiting young women. Since 2010, there's been an increase in the intake of women to train as healthcare professionals from 20% to nearly 50% in 2020. This is significant in that only, as I said before, only 14% of women are literate. Most never finish primary school. Many are married off by their families at a very young age. Education is one way to delay marriage. Students come from 10 states as well as the Nuba Mountains in Sudan. They are learning to live and work with people from different ethnic groups, and they will tell you that the most important thing they have learned is to respect and appreciate their colleagues from different cultural groups. Here we see the students sharing their cultural dances at the annual Cultural Week at CHTI. Future leaders of the country are being formed in solidarity institutions. Because of the poverty in the country, students must be supported fully for room, board, and tuition, and in some cases, transportation to and from the institute, many times by air since roads are impassable and insecure. The cost to educate a nurse or midwife is $7,000 per year of the 3-year program. That includes the room and board as well. Once educated, these professionals are able to support their families. Graduates from the CHTI can be found throughout the country and in Nuba Mountains. This is a graph of the graduating class of 2018. And you'll notice at the top, 15 graduates from the CHTI went to the Nuba Mountains to work with Dr. Tom Catenya at Mother of Mercy Hospital, which is the only facility in the area in Sudan. Nearly 90% of graduates are employed in healthcare profession within the country. Just so you can meet some of these graduates, let me introduce you to Yolanda, who works at the Daniel Kamboni Hospital in Wau.
Joanna Gonda. I'm a graduate from CSTI. I finished last year, 2017. Now I'm helping here in Komboni as a registered midwife in maternity ward. And I'm also helping some students in assessing them on what they're doing. Thanks.
This is one of our smiling graduates from CHTI who's doing wonderful work here at Kamboni Hospital.
Joanna Gonda.
Margaret Namoyo, a recent graduate, shows what she has learned at CHTI. And she leaves as a graduate full of confidence.
Actually, I've learned very many things. First of all, the most thing that I've learned from here actually is the knowledge of how to care for a patient. I'm speaking with confidence that if I go outside there, I will save very many people that is suffering from different conditions. And with the help of the colleagues that we have graduated together from CHTI Institute, I have learned a lot of things to do with theory, things to do with practical, how to care for patients who are unconscious, how to care for patients who need intensive care unit, how to care for children, how to identify children's problem. If a child is crying, what exactly does it indicate? So there are a lot of things that I've learned from this school.
This is another graduate. Beatrice Peter graduated from the Solidarity Health Training Institute in 2017 as a midwife. She works in the Curran Health Clinic located 280 kilometers from the nearest town, which has a small hospital. Beatrice says that when she first went to Wau to attend the CHTI, everything was new and she had to struggle to keep up as she had no background in health. What she learned there has given her a very strong foundation for her work now. She says that people in this region are aware that CHTI trained nurses and midwives are much better than those trained elsewhere. She serves as the only trained midwife in the entire region. The health clinic treats mostly Toposa people, and Beatrice manages the maternal and child development department by herself. She covers antenatal, deliveries, sick pregnant women, and postnatal services. The government supplies drugs and medicines to the clinic, but not personnel. Supplies and equipment are not enough, nor do they deliver good quality items. In fact, many patients have passed away due to the lack of medicines, advanced equipment, or lack of transport to the nearest city. This is frustrating for Beatrice, who knows what to do, but often lacks the resources to assist patients. Beatrice is a professional, and she tries not to let her emotions affect her performance. But sometimes cases present in which she gets deeply involved. One such case recently was a young mother ready for delivery who was brought to her having difficulty pushing. The mother was exhausted and the child was exhausted. She examined the young mother and then decided to let her rest for 2 hours, giving her fluids and some food. When the baby was eventually delivered, it had no life to it. It was so exhausted that it didn't have reflex actions. Eyes were shut. It made no movement or sounds. Breathing was barely visible. The case seemed hopeless. The other women said they would be glad to bury the child. Beatrice refused, but she told others to pray. She believes that not only by medicine do we save lives, but by the help of our Lord. Then, calling upon all her training, she began to work on the child, even giving mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. She worked for almost 2 hours, applying all she had learned at the CHTI and in her experience. The exhausted mother could only lie on the bed and watch. Beatrice was almost to the point of giving up. And then it happened. By a miracle of God, this baby suddenly coughed and sputtered and cried out. Everyone in the room was shocked. It was as if she brought the newborn baby back to life. The baby immediately began to suck and within a short time was moving and reacting like any normal baby. The mother was overjoyed. Beatrice was now the exhausted one, but she was so happy to have the baby alive. Here we see a picture of the mother and the child. Students at CHTI are also celebrating International Nurses Day. They celebrate the medical successes of graduates of CHTI who are making a difference day in and day out in South Sudan. And I want to thank you for your attention and your interest and support of Solidarity and the work being done to build the capacity of the healthcare sector in South Sudan by training qualified healthcare professionals. I also want to thank Paul Jeffrey for many of the photos used in this presentation. Now I'm going to turn this program over to Father Tom Tiscornia, a Maryknoll missionary and former chaplain at the CHTI. Tom, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Joan. I spent 2 years living and working with women and men religious from 8 different countries and seven religious congregations as members of Solidarity with South Sudan. This was and is a real model of cooperation and unity for the young students who come from a variety of ethnic groups in South Sudan, as well as the Nuba Mountains. They come from an experience of having lived through years of war, the fears and deprivations resulting from ethnic conflict. So working with men and women from different countries and congregations was a very good example for the students because they were coming from very various ethnic groups and they were young men and women. For some, it was their first time to meet and befriend others from other parts of the country and ethnic backgrounds whom they might have heard about, but now they lived, studied, ate, played, and worked together. Some had been in the military, while others come from rural areas where they had been accustomed to herding and farming. They come too from various economic and educational backgrounds. South Sudan is extremely poor, so as the students found themselves in somewhat urban setting, studying with others, they had to adjust to many new situations such as dress, sharing, new study habits, speaking in English and sometimes in Arabic. For some, English was a challenge. Being young, some of these adjustments came easy, while for others who might have been more introverted, it was challenging. But over the months and years, they befriended one another and helped each other with adjustments and studies. And this is a great achievement to watch. Not all were Catholic or even Christian, but CHTI's model is that of giving Christian service, especially to the ill and childbearing. This sense of service and caring is imbued in many of their traditional customs and is only enhanced by the gospel message. Prayer and service is woven into the rhythm of life at CHTI. There was daily mass available for those who wished, as well as weekly mass for the whole community. Some of the students shared in its preparation of songs, others as readers in service. Twice I was involved with the preparation for sacraments of baptism and Holy Communion and confirmation. 2 of the students Concon and Stephen, they did the instruction, and I focused on the Gospel of Luke. In a sense, we formed a small Christian community during this time of preparation. During Lent, the students led the Stations of the Cross around the campus. One year, the students themselves prepared a passion play, which could rival any such interpretation throughout the world. I was moved and very proud of them. I made myself available weekly in the evening for reconciliation for any who wished. It was a casual setting outside in front of the chapel. The students knew that I was there. It was a chance for them to just stop by and share some of what might be bothering them and what was on their mind, or just small, ordinary talk, which each one listening to the other. For me, this gave an insight into the lives of youth and young adults, dealing with relationships, studies, being away from home. Some of them were parents living far from their children. This was a more serious part of their journey, where they could be more open to looking forward to their future. Of course, finding employment and marriage, family were all part of their hopes. The best part of being chaplain was being able to be present and around with students in their daily lives. I made sure to eat with the students at least once a week, sit with them as they played dominoes and cards, enjoyed watching them play volleyball and soccer, visit when they were sick in their dorms or in the hospital. As chaplain, I was not identified as being faculty, so in a sense, I could be seen more as a companion or elder to the students. Maybe in this way, they were more relaxed with me. When I had mass at the local prison, often some of the students would come with me and speak with the prisoners. This was a great joy for the students as well as for the prisoners. And it also gave the students a chance to see some of the darkest side of life for other people. Besides being chaplain, I was also involved with the financial office of the Institute, being responsible for the salaries of employees, paying bills for food and supplies, as well as going to purchase items in the local market. But the best part of being there at CHTI was having the young people around with their smiling faces and sincere desire and hope for a better future and a better nation. For sure, this is one of the pearls that is available for any one of you participating in this webinar. If you or someone you know feel moved to be a part of training these future nurses and midwives, you might contact Sister Joan at Friends in Solidarity. You will never regret it. I don't know who I handed over to, but whoever it is, you're welcome.
That would be me, Tom. Tom, thank you
Okay.
so much for those wonderful words and your firsthand experience doing so many things and ministering in so many ways to the students at the Catholic Health Training Institute. I'm
My
sure they miss
pleasure.
you there. And now it's my pleasure to introduce you to Camille Grippon. Camille is a phenomenal colleague of mine who is the Systems Director for Global Ministries for the Bon Secours Mercy Health System, which is a strong supporter of CHTI. And so, Camille, can you share with us why the health system under your leadership is so passionate about supporting the Catholic Health Training Institute?
Thank you, sister. It's so good to see you. There's really three primary drivers of why we're inspired to support. But before I begin with those three drivers, I want to just say that it's really wonderful to see friends, collaborators, and colleagues on this call. And a big thank you to all the nurses on this International Nurses Day. I'm especially mindful, obviously, of South Sudan, all the globe, and our own system, Bon Secours Mercy Health. So thank you to all the nurses for what they do. We've been a supporter of Solidarity since 2015, and we were initially introduced to Solidarity's work through the great leadership of Sister Joan and also Sister Perek, who represented our sole sponsor at the time, the Sisters of Bon Secours. Our collaboration has really focused on the provision of funds through our foundation to support general operations, including scholarships for the students at Solidarity's Catholic Health Training Institute in WOW, South Sudan. As I mentioned, there's really three primary drivers, Sister Mary Beth. The first one is need. As you have heard, there's an incredible need for qualified, well-trained nurses and midwives in South Sudan. And the Catholic Health Training Institute helps to address this critical gap. One of the pillar programs of global ministries is maternal and child health. And it's perhaps a reason to reflect on the public health indicators of South Sudan. As Sister Joan mentioned, South Sudan ranks #1 in the world in terms of maternal mortality rates and 8th in the entire globe in terms of infant mortality rates. To put it in a broader context, 94% of all maternal deaths occur in low and lower middle income countries. Sub-Saharan Africa alone is roughly 2/3 of all of maternal mortality deaths in the entire world. This high number of maternal deaths in some areas of the world really reflects the inequality in access to quality health services and highlights the incredible gap between the rich and the poor. In the developed world, there's about 11, in high income countries, there's about 11 per 100,000, 11 deaths per 100,000 live births for maternal mortality rates. And in low income countries, low and lower income countries, that's 500 per 100,000 live births. So this huge and painful gap is what Solidarity and Bon Secours Mercy Health is trying to close. The second driver, Sister Mary Beth, is the alignment between Bon Secours Mercy Health and Solidarity's values. What guides us and calls us to action is our Catholic identity. Catholic social teachings, principles of sanctity of for all life and a preferential option for the poor and solidarity for all humanity is really what inspires our mutual collaboration. And finally, our third driver is sustainability. The graduates of the Catholic Health Training Institute find work in hospitals and their skills save lives, and their employment in turn supports themselves and their families. Global Ministries ensures that our programmatic focus and our collaborators do no harm and empower local communities. And Solidarity truly does this. We really respect local authority and try to make sure that our program and our collaborations are ethical and sustainable. Solidarity's commitment to local solutions and expertise is essential, and they've earned local, regional, and international credibility for the work that they do. I really want to thank you for the opportunity to speak to all of you about our collaboration with Solidarity, and really encourage all of you to spread the word of Solidarity, to increase our network and hopefully our sponsors as well. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be with you. And I'll turn that back to you, Sister Mary Beth.
Camille, thank you. Your words are always passionate and always inspiring. We could not do the work we do in South Sudan without you, your leadership, and really the backing of the Bon Secours Mercy Health System, as well as many other donors that we have. But thank you so much for being with us today, Camille.
Thank you.
And I want to thank Joan and Tom, as well as Camille, for your heartfelt words today. I'm sure that these words touched a place in the hearts of all of our participants Joan, I was especially taken, actually, I had chills at the story of Beatrice saving the life of that newborn baby, working for 2 hours, laboring for 2 hours to bring that child to life. And also the faces of the students at CHTI, they just exude such beauty, such pride, and such goodness. So really, thanks to Paul Jeffries for his wonderful photography, because pictures definitely are worth 1,000 words. So if you haven't already done so, here's a chance for you to offer any questions you would like to offer in the chat box. And when you do that, be sure the questions are going to everyone and not just a specific person on the panel. And we'll do our best to respond to them as time permits. And so, John, I'll pass the mic to you.
Thank you, Mary Beth. And again, I join with everybody else, thanking Joan, Tom, and Camille for their tremendous presentations, which were full of information and inspiration. And while we're waiting for questions maybe to come into the chat, I would have a couple of questions just to start off. And Joan, maybe asking you first, in terms of COVID-19, how has that affected the education in CHTI?
Well, thank you very much, John, for that question. Actually, the government shut down all institutions, really, wherever people gather, from March until October last year. And in October, they opened up, and especially for those who were in what they call terminal degrees. In other words, if you were in the last year, like grade 8, grade 12, last year of university, etc. Anyway, CHTI had all of their students back on campus, and they negotiated in some way with the government because they felt themselves to be essential services. In other words, training healthcare providers and professionals is of such a serious nature that even those who are being trained needed to continue their work. Again, this year, the country shut down from February and through April, but the students remained on campus. There was an outbreak of COVID in Wow, which is the nearest city. And so students were kept on campus and did not go to the hospitals at that particular point in time. And clinics were closed because actually it was 3 doctors that were infected. But all of the necessary protocols are in place on the campus to try to mitigate any getting of the disease. And so far as I know, no one has been infected.
Thanks, Joan. Tom, you're muted, but I have a question for you. And that would be, you know, you've talked so heartfelt about the students while they're at the school. I'm just wondering, in terms of their own, once they leave the school, once they graduate, what are some of the frustrations that they might find in their lives as they carry forward their careers?
First of all, finding a job. Some of them, if they were sponsored by some organization or by a diocese, well, then normally they would be employed, but others just have to look around for positions. Then when they get into some of the positions where they would be working, they would not find a lot of maybe say the quality of equipment or materials necessary in order to do their work properly. So like with Beatrice there in Gunan in that one clinic, she was able to improvise. And so maybe, you know, the students are able to improvise if they can't find exactly what they were wanting. I just wanted to say something about in the Nuba Mountains in terms of COVID, they were prepared up there. There was only one case, but they were certainly prepared. And as we had seen in the beginning, there are at least 15 or more graduates of CHTI there present working at the hospital there. So they certainly would be able to deal with it if it came up there.
Thanks, Tom.
Mhm.
Joan, maybe you would be best to answer this question from Laura in terms of how does one get involved in teaching students there? Is there a need for people to volunteer to teach, or is there a greater need for financial help?
Thank you for that good question. Yes, there is a need for teachers, trainers, provided they can offer at least, say, 6 months. At this particular point in time, it's probably not the best time to go there because of the threat of the COVID and lack of vaccines. I mean, the vaccines are very slow to come and very few people have been inoculated or vaccinated. So it's not the best time, but there is need to financially support those who are on the ground. There is a staff. Some of them are local, some from Kenya, some from Uganda, doing the teaching. So we still need to support the students who attend the college, the operational costs. And you can donate at our website, which is www.solidarityfriends.org. There is both information for online and also for sending checks through the mail on that website.
Okay. Joan, you mentioned vaccines, and there is a question then concerning the availability of vaccines. Are there plans for the staff and students to be vaccinated, or what is the availability really?
The availability is very slow. The country is supposed to be getting AstraZeneca from COVAX, which is an instrument set up by the World Health Organization to enable vaccines to get to third world countries or to developing countries. The first batch of AstraZeneca that was sent was out of date. And while the company insists that they're still good for 6 months, the confidence is not there when that happens. So very few have been vaccinated. Some of the bishops and those over 60, 65, and some healthcare workers supposedly have been vaccinated. But it's going to be a long time before people have access to those due to the fact that the vaccines are just not available or they're too costly. So we are working, Friends in Solidarity is working with a group called CatholicCares.org on equity, trying to help the government and international organizations come to some resolution about sharing either technology or sharing equipment for making vaccines closer to the scene. Whether that will happen, we don't know, but certainly there's a need. Wherever one person is infected, it infects us all unless they get vaccinated.
Okay. Thanks, Joan. There's also another question you or Camille, somebody could, with regards to other international medical groups, for example, Doctors Without Borders, are they working in South Sudan, and do they work in conjunction with Solidarity with South Sudan? Or?
Yeah, Doctors Without Borders is definitely there in some of the most remote areas, especially around where the flooding is. Besides that, you have some volunteers working from Catholic Medical Mission Board, and it's possible that Catholic Relief Services may also have some people on the ground. So there are many medical groups working there, and there are coalitions of non-governmental organizations trying to work together, even funded by governments, so that people are going where the need is and not duplicating.
Thanks. All right. Mary Beth, I don't think we have any more questions here, so I
Okay,
turn it
well,
back to you.
thank you. And thanks for those wonderful questions. You know, when a question is asked, it helps all of us gain a better appreciation for the situation that we're talking about. Joan also mentioned the website for Friends in Solidarity, so I put that address in the chat box if you want to take a look at that. And so on behalf of the board and staff of Friends in Solidarity, I want to once again thank each of you for making time in your very busy schedule to be with us today. We hope you are leaving this time together with a heart full of hope for our sisters and brothers in South Sudan and a renewed appreciation for how much you are, in fact, friends in solidarity with the South Sudanese people. And we're going to end with a prayer that will be shared on the screen. You're muted, but I will pray the prayer aloud, and you can pray that prayer aloud where you are. And so let us pray for the nurses and midwives around the world on this International Nurses Day. God of healing and hope, you sanctify the call of nurses as those who offer themselves in the service of others. Jesus, just as you willingly took on human nature and in doing so elevated it, the nurse willingly takes on often thankless and commonplace tasks. In doing so, she or he sanctifies and makes them holy. On this day, may nurses around the world experience your loving presence, especially during these endless days of the COVID-19 pandemic. Strengthen them as they serve with faithful devotion. Be a strength to them that they may be strong for others. Be a comfort to them that they may comfort others. And as their shifts come to an end, be a resting place for them that they may know your love, your grace, and your joy. Amen. So thank you so much. And for those of you who are in the healthcare profession, happy Nurses Day. We so appreciate you. Thank you.